Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host. I'm Darlene Childress. I'm a life and parenting coach. And I also am someone who's very passionate about healing and supporting women when they're going through difficult seasons in their life. Today on the podcast, I am speaking with Cyndi Horwitz, who wrote this beautiful book called Held by the Tide. And I wanted to have a conversation with Cyndi because I really believe that this particular book would be so helpful to many of you who listen to this podcast. This podcast is called Become a Calm Mama. And how do we do that? What are these strategies, right? I have the calm break, which is checking in, becoming aware of your body, of how you feel, labeling those feelings, and then regulating those through moving, either moving your body or moving your mind. And if you've ever wanted like a book or a handbook or a guidebook or a series of exercises and journal prompts and different mantras that would actually help heal you, this book has all that. It is a journey of hope and healing through breath, movement, and self-love. And what I like about this book is that Cyndi shares a lot of her own personal journey through grief and through pain and sorrow and difficult things she's gone through in her life. She lost her mother when she was only 15 years old. And then in 2023, her younger son was diagnosed with epilepsy. And the journey to get that diagnosis was extremely painful. And the treatment protocol for him has been a huge challenge to her. Even if you haven't gone through grief in this way, or you don't have a child with a medical diagnosis that you're navigating, that you will still relate to the common struggle we have as women to people please and to abandon ourselves in order to make everyone else feel comfortable, in order to have everyone else's life work for them while we don't take care of ourselves. This is a conversation where Cyndi and I talk about how to get out of that trap of self-abandonment and how to take excellent care of ourselves through movement, through breath, through building a better relationship with ourselves in love and in compassion and kindness towards ourselves. So I really think you're going to love this. You can get a copy of her book on Amazon or wherever you buy books. It's called Held by the Tide, written by Cyndi Horwitz. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation I have with Cyndi. Welcome, Cyndi, to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here to talk with you today.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about your book, Held by the Tide. And I love the title so much. And I wondered if you could just share a little bit about the title and like why you wrote this book and what it has meant to you. Because I want to first say I love it, as you know, and I want every person listening to get a copy of it. So I'm excited to talk about it, but just kind of tell us like why you wrote it. What does Held by the Tide mean? And
So I wrote the book as a way to offer my life experience to others in a hope that what I have lived through and how I have learned to cope with the challenges I've faced could help others that perhaps see themselves in my story. Not necessarily the specific details of my story, but just the experiences of grief, of motherhood, of caretaking, of having those moments where you just lose yourself a little bit. Being held by the tide, kind of about trust in yourself, trust in the universe, if you will, that if you allow yourself to just be held, then you know that the tide is going to come in and the tide is going to go out. And there's going to be moments that are going to be hard, and there's going to be moments that are going to be joyful. And if you kind of allow yourself to flow with what is rather than fighting against it, then I think you just learn to kind of be in your body and with yourself and who you are. So
yeah, I love that because it's so true that your book really shares how to be held in spaces that are painful. And you share about these different times in your life, but particularly with your son, Easton, which we'll get into, and how how much pain you've experienced and how much sorrow and how much grief, as well as joy. But learning how to not solve the problem, not heal. Like eventually we heal, but you can't heal when you're in the middle of the pain. That's not how it works. And I think this book is a really beautiful example of how to walk through difficult times while being held within yourself. And you use body work, breath work, movement to help us find that space within ourselves to not crumble, right? To be held. Yeah. How do you think about it all?
So I think I just want to share. I think for me, for this long time, I felt like if I just kept moving and I just kept going and not experience, really allowing myself to stop and experience what was going on, that I would be okay.
That
Um,
if you just plowed through it, just keep going, don't stop. Yeah, that you could survive it or get through it, something like that.
Right. And so the little practices are, I guess, my way of slowing myself down enough to experience where I am, to feel exactly what I'm feeling in the moment, whether wherever that is in my body, in my mind, in my heart, in my neck, wherever it is, and to soften that part of me through whether it's movement or breath or journaling or mantra. And when I talk about mantra, I'm really talking about talking to myself.
Yeah, like a
I
positive affirmation or a sentence or two that you are repeating as a soothing, something to soothe yourself. Like, we can survive this, or I'm okay, or this is temporary. It's in this podcast, listeners know these are like, I call move your body, move your mind when we need to calm our nervous system. And moving your mind is finding these simple sentences that do feel true and feel supportive and soothing. And there's a lot of examples of that in your book of how to tap into that.
Yes, for sure. I do believe that we listen to ourselves, in that things that we say to ourselves, we believe. But this is deeper. This is more just even recognizing, like, I am safe in this moment.
Mhm.
This is a moment in time, and this moment will pass. My children actually joke with one another now. They'll say to each other, "You are not in danger," when the other one is pissing the other one off. Because it's really about just grounding yourself in the moment of, like, I really am safe right now. I will get through this moment. And continuing to talk to yourself,
Mhm.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be a sentence or a positive affirmation, but just giving yourself compassion and loving kindness, that whatever you're experiencing is okay.
Mhm. Yeah. It's like real true validation and emotional support in that moment. I always like think because there's like multiple parts in there. We're going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. We're going to survive this. This is hard and that's okay. It reminds me of a part of your book in the beginning where you talk about self-abandonment and you wrote, as a young woman, you became the girl who made herself easy to be around, the one who didn't ask for too much, who knew how to make others feel good. I loved this. The one who read the room before she even entered it. You wrote, I thought if I was helpful enough, agreeable enough, low maintenance enough, I wouldn't be pushed away. But underneath that was fear, the fear that if I showed too much sadness, too much need, too much anything, I'd be left behind. It's something I think we can all relate to, of that hiding and trying to show just the facade, or, the outside is fine, and being there for other people and showing up in easy ways. And really the call to tapping into ourselves is the opposite of that. It is, instead of self abandonment, it's self blank. Like, what do you think about that? And what have you learned? How did you get to no longer leaving yourself, abandoning yourself, and instead inviting a conversation within yourself?
How did I get there?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that, we're kind of like born into this world just like, ourselves, right? Wild and free. And then
Hmm.
we get these messages, verbal and nonverbal, from our parents, from society, from peers, of like how we're supposed to be in order to survive, really. Because especially as young children, our survival is our love from our parents taking care of us. And so to become what we think is lovable to our parents and to society, to people, in order to survive. And
Belonging means safety. Belonging means, yeah, not being abandoned.
oh, right, exactly. I think that, that is like deep within our DNA, that our survival is to belong,
Hmm. They're dependent. Like
to
we
like,
cannot survive alone. We know that. Yeah.
right. Yes, to
We come
belong.
wired that way. Hmm.
Yes, belong to a tribe and to do what we have to do to survive. And so because of my life circumstance and the messages I received, I became very afraid that if I was a burden to somebody else, that I would lose that person, that they would abandon me, that they would see me as too much, and that my discomfort would be too uncomfortable for them. And so I lived that way for a very long time. I will say that this is one of the beautiful things that came from COVID for me. So during COVID, I was alone at home with my children every day. My husband still went to his office every day. And I had to make a very, very conscious choice about how I was going to survive what we were all experiencing. I had pretty severe germophobia always, which was something passed down to me by my mother. So the idea of this like sickness that everyone could get and die just threw me like, and
Especially because you had lost your mom. Like death was a real thing. Your mom died when you were 15. You share that in the book. And that is a huge loss at that age. And it has a giant impact that permeates throughout your whole life. But then when you know loss, that it can happen, it becomes very real. And I'm sure that that became even more real for you during COVID.
yes, 100%. And this was somebody, my mother, who I lost, was somebody who was very germophobic, was very ahead of her time when it comes to health and wellness and taking care of herself. So this was a person that I viewed as, of perfect health. And then she did get sick and die. So that is a very, real experience that I carry with me.
Right, that you can't
So,
protect yourself from it. Like on some subconscious level, you realize you can be perfect and still get sick. Like, so, okay, we got to definitely keep the standard up. And also, we're always vulnerable. And that, yeah, that's like a core belief then that gets in there. And then, not to, I don't want to tease it out so much, but like then your son has a chronic medical condition that also then comes out of this COVID period of time. So yeah, I think sometimes it's interesting, and I want to talk about Easton, of course, but how our sometimes our worst fears kind of happen, and I don't know if that's a contract we have with the universe or what it is, but it is an invitation to grow, and in an invitation to figure out a different way to relate to the world. And
yes.
COVID was almost like for you a great training ground maybe. So tell us how you coped during COVID. What was useful to you in that period of time?
Right. I think that it was, this contract with the universe for me, for sure, in that the universe is like, this is your biggest fear and go. Um, so, I made the decision very early on that I was going to take this time to be healthy. And when I say healthy, that for me is healing. And so I needed to heal inside of me the anxiety that I was carrying around, the fear of being somebody I love being sick. I made the decision, healing, healthy mind and body. I woke up every morning and I rode my Peloton with a group of friends. I did yoga. I did practiced all the things that I talk about in the book that, really were just like salvation to me at that time and the way that I really survived. That's also when I really made the connection between body and movement and breath and how it changes how you feel. And I think, like you mentioned, I think that everything I did during that time kind of laid this like foundational groundwork for when Easton was finally diagnosed, that I already had these tools that I had used during that I had built up this toolbox during that time of, when you're living in this like high state of anxiety, your body is like in fight or flight. And the only thing I could think was I had to get out of this state. I have to be in a calmer state and breathing. And when I talk about movement, it's really breath to movement. So when you're actually linking a movement of your body to your breath. It signals to your body that you are safe and it has a calming effect.
Like inhaling when you're doing cat and exhaling when you're doing cow or something like that. Or laying
Yes.
down with, your exercises. You describe all of these exercises in these movements in the book. And it's like, they're yogic terms. So maybe someone's never done yoga. I doubt it. This podcast listeners are on it. But um, and you're in a child's pose, you describe going into that pose and then having like a really beautiful invitation to breathing and feeling grounded and releasing your body into the ground, or laying down in shavasana. And with that, that's just laying down on your back, ladies. Then what do you do? How do you breathe in and breathe out and let go, or moving through different poses, inhaling and exhaling? And I love that we're not talking about like exercise, we're really talking about how to reset your nervous system, how to ground yourself, which just means finding space in between the moments, right? Touching grass, like finding the ground so that you don't feel like you're drowning in a washing machine or in the ocean.
Yeah. So when we're in fight or flight, don't really have the ability to have critical thinking. So that's when we're very reactive to everything around us. When we can get into this calmer state, we have the ability to actually respond to our situation rather than react, whether that's to whatever's going on inside of ourselves or around us, whether it's our partner or our children or a friend or a family member, or it's traffic when you're driving, whatever is coming up, that it gives you just have space
Mm-hmm.
to respond.
Yes. And going back to like the self abandonment question, it is what I read when I read your book is that the way that you had stopped abandoning yourself was by meeting yourself in those moments. And in COVID, it sounds like every morning, kind of connecting with yourself, being curious, listening, having a better conversation within yourself, with you. I see it that way. Like that, my path to stop abandoning myself and becoming a people pleaser and relational perfectionist and all those things is by becoming a better friend to myself, to showing up for me, to have better conversations with myself. I can't stop abandoning myself until I stop abandoning myself.
Right. That self-compassion piece too. And treating yourself the way that you treat those that you love,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like holding yourself and giving yourself that compassion and self-love that you would give to your children or to someone that you care deeply for.
The more you receive it from yourself, I think the safer we feel. It's like you had written, that there were a lot of fears that if you showed up with too much sadness, too much need, too much anything real, you'd be left behind. And what I notice in your book is that you really realize it's not too much. When we take a minute to connect with ourselves through breath, through inquiry, journal prompts, and kind of questions, curiosity, through movement, that we find out it isn't too much. We aren't too much. It's containable and it's okay to have the needs. I think it's very black and white thinking for us a lot of times that we have to not show anything because if we show anything, it'll be too much. But we start to reveal it to ourselves and it's like, oh, wait, this is manageable.
Yes, and it's also practicing for me, allowing myself to be that quote unquote burden to others, right? Practicing allowing other people to, I think for a long time, I did not trust that if I fell apart or really needed somebody, that that person would be there.
Yeah.
And so it's having that trust that the people that around me that care for me, that love me, like that I could practice falling apart in front of them and that they would be there. And also my own therapy, finding a therapist that I trusted, that I could, and I had gone to therapy, but I I think I had never fully allowed myself to just fall apart.
Lay it all out there.
Lay it all out there and trust that that wasn't going to last forever, right? I think that's part of it too, is that I would always think I got to keep going, I got to keep going because if I stop and I'm too sad and I allow myself to slip too deep into the that pain and those feelings that I'm never going to get back up and I'm never going to get out of it, that I'm going to get be stuck.
Yeah, that's that all or nothing. Like if I tip, I'm never coming back. And that's terrifying. And like, I'm not going to be rescued. No one's going to help me. I'm going to be alone. I mean, it does feel, I think that's what anxiety does. It's very black and white, all or nothing thinking. And when we dip our toe in, we realize, oh, wait, we didn't die. Okay. Like people, I don't know, we survived that. And you can kind of survive it again and again and again. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's the first bits of vulnerability. And I think I know for me, and maybe this is true for you once you found out about Easton's diagnosis, that this happened to me when my friend died by suicide as a shock. And it was the first time in my motherhood journey that I couldn't get out of bed. And I grew up with a depressed mother who didn't get out of bed. So if I didn't get out of bed, I became her or something. Like I had, I
Right.
needed to be, I was hyper capable and over functioning. And then I couldn't. I literally couldn't. I had to rely on my husband. That was the first time I'd ever relied on him in 20 plus years of marriage at that point. And friends. And it was like around my son's birthday. And my friends bought him a cake, got him a birthday present. Like, I could not do it. And then I realized, oh, it's okay to let people love you. It's okay to let people take
Mhm.
care of you. They want to. They do love me and they want to be there for me. And it's an honor and a privilege. It's not a burden.
Right.
And I don't know what it was like for you when you started to unburden yourself in that way or show your pain.
Yeah, I think it was similar. I think the first time and we can talk about Easton and um
Yeah,
but
share a little bit about him
his
and what happened.
so, Easton is a super bright, creative, funny, loving soul
Hmm.
who, from the moment he was born, I sensed something. And the best way I could describe it is that I would feel like I would like lose him energetically for a second.
Mhm.
And there'd be like this like space between us. And I was like, and I couldn't explain that to anybody because it sounds a little
Cuckoo.
strange. Yeah.
Yeah. But
But
I think moms would understand that. Yeah.
yeah. And so I just had this sense, and I had an older child. So, an older son. And although, obviously every child is unique, and I was not comparing one to the other, I kind of had done it before, right? So, like, had Easton been my first child, maybe my instincts would have been a little different. But I kind of sensed something. Things were just different in little ways. Like his ability to chew food was different, I could tell. And he was, like I said, he's extremely bright. He is extremely strong-willed. No is not in that his vocabulary, which I think is a beautiful thing because it's so part of his perseverance. But I kind of always sensed something, and he had different medical things that were misdiagnosed for a long time. And through just this like deep desire to figure out what was going on with him and help him, because really when he started third grade, that I really could see he was struggling. He was really struggling at school. He was struggling with, what teachers or therapists would say was, ADHD, right? This boy has ADHD. This is why he was struggling. And that really didn't fit for me. I mean, yes, his behaviors fit, but it didn't fit for me that that was the only thing that was going on with him because of this like weird energetic loss I would feel, and also these other symptoms that he was having that were continuously misdiagnosed.
So you were putting you had the behavioral issues, and then you had some medical issues and some relational issues. And everybody's saying this is this and this is that. Like they're separating. This is the behavioral is ADHD and the medical is, well, we keep guessing over here. Relational is, who knows what they're saying, immaturity, or you're not even able to explain energetically. I lose him. Like,
Right.
right. So, but as a parent, you're holding all those parts of him in a holistic way. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. Like the answers that I'm receiving are too compartmentalized to actually encapsulate what's happening for my child. Is that fair?
That is correct. That's exactly how I felt. And that there was something more that could explain what was going on with him. Um, and so I kept pursuing um, different opinions and testing to try to figure this out. Um, I would say that that is my part of my perseverance, is that I would not
You're
stop.
like, speaking of no is not in my vocabulary.
Yes, this is where he learned it from. So, he was eventually diagnosed in 2023 with focal epilepsy,
Focal
and
epilepsy.
which means that he had seizures coming from one specific part of the brain,
Okay.
which is what they picked up on his first EEG. Now, true to Easton's nature, this was not easy basic focal epilepsy. This has been a journey that we're still on. Um, you had asked me about this practicing of allowing myself to be held. The first time I really experienced that was he had an exploratory brain surgery, and my two best friends came with me to the hospital. My husband was also at the hospital, but my two best friends came, and I really just practiced letting them take care of me. I let them order me lunch. I let them sit with me. I let them talk with me. And I let myself just be held by them,
Mm.
and it was okay. It felt good.
Yeah, it
And
was more than
then
okay, right? It was like, wow, I actually like being cared for. It's not as scary or as demeaning or shaming as I thought it would be. That's how I experienced it.
right, and I can continue to do this.
Uh-huh.
Now, Now, that doesn't mean that there have not been moments where I still revert to those like old patterns where I notice myself kind of withdrawing when things are overwhelming or stressful and kind of like being within myself and not sharing as much what's going on because it is hard that, we all have very busy lives. It's hard when you speak to someone maybe once or twice a week and then you have to spend that conversation telling them all the terrible things that have
The
happened,
new
right?
updates of your child's medical journey. Yes.
Right. And so there have been times where I have kept things to myself or I've tried to power through this experience, right? Because, like I said, healing is a daily practice. So, of course, there's moments where I still go into fight or flight. I still am afraid to let others see like the real deep fear or pain that I'm in.
Hmm. I think that's normal too because there is time and place, and so I think it's helpful to articulate that a little bit that we're not saying go through the world sharing every moment of your pain. I think self care is this inner wisdom of I am going to take really good care of myself right now, and maybe that is sharing and reaching out, or maybe that is not talking about it right now because I would like to escape, or I would like to not think about it for a little while, or I don't have the bandwidth for this conversation. And there's an integrity to it that is different than, oh, everything's fine. No worries. Kind of that fake self abandonment is a version of that, which I'm sure you resort to sometimes, as do I. But there can be room for genuine integrity and authenticity where we know we're not necessarily okay, but we also know we're taking care of ourselves. And if there's an appropriate place to share that, hey, girlfriend, I actually need to talk to you kind of conversation, you do take care of yourself in that way as well.
Yeah, and I think that that is part of it all, right? This idea of really knowing yourself, because we can only know ourselves when we continue to be curious about ourselves and we continue to talk to ourselves and check in. And I think that that's really what I practice is I check in with myself, are you not calling this person back because you don't want to burden them, or are you not calling them back because in this moment, what feels good is to not talk about things? And then, if that's the answer in the case, then allowing myself that time to not talk about it, but then reminding myself, okay, now let's check in again. You've had some time to kind of marinate in this on your own. Where are you at now? Can you reach out? Can you let yourself be sad in front of someone or vulnerable in front of someone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really radical honesty with ourselves, within ourselves, and building that relationship up so that we feel emotionally safe enough within ourselves to say the truth and to trust those questions. If we answer them honestly, there won't be anger. I think we have inner critics that can be really cruel. And we then don't, or we aren't honest within ourselves. And the safer we can be, the more we spend time with ourselves in love, the safer we feel, the more honest we can be. Just like with our kids, it's like, I want to have a relationship with my children that they feel emotionally safe to be vulnerable enough to admit mistake or to admit pain. But if I have not created enough emotional safety, they won't do that. And that is a huge loss for them because they don't have someone that they can necessarily be vulnerable with. That is true for within ourselves as well, creating enough emotional safety. within ourselves.
Yes, and also modeling that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be scared or nervous about something, that all of these emotions are part of being human, and we don't have to hide any of them, that we will not be judged for having this like human experience of feeling.
Yeah, modeling that to our kids and then testing the waters ourselves in our own relationships, right? You wrote this really beautiful thing about having a child with a medical diagnosis. You said, no one talks about how much of yourself you lose when you're fighting this hard for your child. The quiet unraveling, the slow erosion of ease, identity, of dreams, the weight of advocacy, of managing, of vigilance, of being the one who holds it all together. And I think many moms can relate to that because if you have a child who has any non-typical situation, right? Autism, ADHD, medical issues, this world that isn't typical is such a heavy burden. What are your kind of go-to strategies to lighten that load?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, living with a child with epilepsy is kind of always in a state of bracing yourself for the next seizure or the next phone call from school, whether it's that Easton had a seizure or he got in trouble at school. But just you're kind of always in that hyper alert state of waiting for
Mm-hmm.
something to happen because of the nature, his diagnosis. I really had to teach myself how I could live and function not in that state all the time because
And
it's
hypervigilance and anxiety, right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, because it's exhausting, because it's very hard for me, it was very hard to be present for my other child. It was very hard to experience joy, and there is so much joy around me. It was hard to just relax.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is where what I had mentioned as this like foundational toolkit that I had developed during COVID really came in, is being able to recognize in my body what was happening when I was either holding my breath and not breathing because I was racing, or my heart was racing, or I just did not feel settled. It was is first being able to recognize that. For me, that's when the breathing and the self-talk really have saved me, because I like I said, I first recognized it, and then I I just breathe and I just tell myself that whatever is, I will be okay. If the phone call comes, I will deal with it when it comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love all that. You mentioned in your book a few tools that have supported you on page 28. In these two pages, there's so much gold. It's like movement invitation, kind of how to move your body, a breath work invitation, and some tools. And I wondered if you could share some of those.
So, one I really like is writing one page every night about everything I wish I could say out loud.
I loved that. When I read that, I laughed out loud. Writing one page each night about everything you wish you could say out loud. Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like as a mom, I go to bed at night, kind of go over the day, and I think about different things that happened and situations that arose, and how I handled them, how in hindsight I could handle things differently. Um, or I think about things that are just what I would be concerned would feel dark to another human being. I think a lot for me in the beginning was about this vision of what I had hoped Easton's life would be, kind of writing that down, that it's this idea of two things being true, right? And having joy and having sorrow, and being sad and grieving this idea of who I thought he was going to be or the life I thought he was going to have, to really actually embracing the life that he does have and who he is, and how the challenges he's faced have made him so strong and so resilient and so deeply compassionate towards other people. And so I think that's what that was about for me. It was just like writing it all out with no fear of judgment from anybody, and especially not myself. That, sometimes we think things for a moment in time and then we don't think them anymore. But just getting that all out.
I love you wrote, placing my hand over my heart and saying to myself, this is hard and I'm still here. There's a lot of evidence of just putting your own hand on your heart that it like can release oxytocin. It's very soothing, and saying something gentle. You also say, I can hold this and I can rest. Like that both things can be true at the same time. And then you have walking slowly. And I just picture walking slowly with my hand on my heart saying, this is hard. I'm still here. I can hold this and I can rest.
Yes, walking is a huge, on the days that I can't either get to the yoga studio, or I can't be at home doing yoga, I walk a lot. I think I definitely do that. I think that just taking those steps, especially if you can walk barefoot and like your feet are like in the ground and you just feel like held by the earth, and you just know that you are okay in that moment.
That's all this entire book is an invitation to whoever's reading it to tap into that you are okay in this moment. It's like, if that's the takeaway, that's the best takeaway we could possibly offer is that whatever grief you're carrying, whatever hardship you're carrying, whatever pain you're carrying, that you can handle that, and you can reach out to people, and you can be angry with them and disappointed and sad, and you can feel all of that and you'll survive it. That everything is survivable. There's so many wonderful things in your book that help us understand how to do that. So I really appreciate you writing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me to talk about all these things that help us to be human.
Yeah. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
I really hope that people take away from this. There's no finish line. There's no being healed or feeling like you've perfected something, because I can certainly say I have not perfected anything. I practice these tools every day, and there's some days where I don't practice them. And it's just being okay, returning back to your healing process. However much time goes by that you're not using these tools, or you're feeling disconnected from yourself or your body, that it's okay. You can go back at any time and reconnect.
Yeah. You're always there for you.
Yes.
Breath is always there. We're always breathing. We can tap into it. We're always moving. We can do it intentionally. We're always having a conversation in our head. We can just invite ourselves to a lovelier one.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I love this.
Thank you.
Hey, Mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.